Why do so many successful people still think that they're not doing enough? And why is it that there's so many purpose-driven entrepreneurs that are burning out? Nikolai explores why burnout isn't simply about doing too much. It's often about living in a prolonged state of survival. She is a holistically oriented therapist, previously a yoga teacher, who believes that living in alignment with our values equals more personal fulfillment and greater impact in the world. Many of the people, she says, who care the most, give the most, want to make the biggest impact, are actually the ones that tend to ignore their nervous systems. There also is a connection, she says, between the nervous system and our ability to hear our own inner wisdom. Perhaps you've been noticing that in yourself. I've noticed that in myself. And the good news is that Nikolai is actually here today to form us how we begin shifting from that survival mode to a life that actually feels more aligned and sustainable through what she calls the calm hustle. I am so excited for this because there really is a difference between living in fear and living in alignment, a difference between force and flow. So I'm so glad that you are all here for it. I'm Jennifer Regular, your host, and let's welcome Nikolai. It's so wonderful to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited, and it's so fun for me to hear you read back some of that stuff that I do. It's nice to hear it from the outside sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely important work, something that's reflective and probably given some people an aha moment already. I'm curious what brought this all to life for you, Nikolai. How has this come to be part of your journey?
Yeah, in some ways I feel like it's been a long journey here, like it is for so many of us. It's our life experiences that tend to build upon themselves that lead us to this current moment in time. But to give you the most abbreviated version, I am a first generation American on one side. My dad is an immigrant from Eastern Europe. And I think because of that, there was something either in my DNA or just early in childhood where I was almost encoded to be like a hard worker and to be very resilient.
Mm.
And I know when speaking to other people who have some sort of like immigration story in their background, they tell me that's very common experience for those of us. Um, but then on top of it, like so many people, I've had little traumas throughout my life, maybe some big traumas that I've overcome. And just a lifetime of learning to pick myself up by my bootstraps that ultimately I think has culminated pretty well because I'm here today, and actually led me to make a career change early on. I'm a therapist, as you read, and I was previously a yoga teacher. But even before that, I had a first career in a more corporate background. And I left that because I wanted to do something that felt more fulfilling. But also, now that I'm a therapist, I have the blessing of seeing many other people who have had journeys, I think, that are not that dissimilar to mine. Women who have overcome hardship in their life, women who have um, learned to problem solve their way out of challenge. And I also work with a lot of neurodiverse women, specifically women with ADHD. And if you want to talk to me about that, we can, but I think there's a lot of unique challenge that comes with that as well. So, um, part immigrant experience, part career switcher experience, part years of watching the nervous systems of other people.
hmm hmm It's true. And you're true. It's true about how similar the stories are, how similar their journey is from that career or corporate into their colleague. And people from all around the world share how enthusiastic or love or passionate they were about their work initially, and then
Mhm.
found it not so fulfilling, or that it wasn't sustainable because of how it affects their nervous system, of how
Mhm.
they get interested in other ideas and pulled in different
Mhm.
directions, and that there are
Mhm.
traumas that impact our journey and our way forward, and how we overcome them is a big part of the journey as well. So
Mhm.
it's not like a separate thing that happens. It's how we, and this is one of the things I notice that people often talking about, that work-life balance, right? And
Mhm.
what I find people coming onto the show and the audience and that is talking about our life work, not
Mhm.
compartmentalizing them anymore. That's constantly has us living in a duality that splits
Mhm.
us.
Mhm.
And something that's also familiar is trying out different careers. I had 16
Mhm.
of them through my more
Mhm.
career oriented field. And, even
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur, having different business ventures and being multi passionate,
Mhm.
and being interested in many different things. And that's can be seen as one of the traits of having ADHD or neurodivergence, right? Is there's a lot that we encompass in life, and that people may even call us all encompassing as well
Mhm.
because of what we bring,
Mhm.
traits and abilities and capabilities and all of that. And I find that when we really get down to what passion really is, when we break up the word, it's pass I on. That I being your
Mhm.
soul's expression of what you're here to
Mhm.
pass on in this lifetime.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it seems like the common thread in all the different types of work and roles that you've taken on in what you're here to serve with is that it's about the nervous system and about our inner wisdom and
Mhm.
shifting in the way that we live and operate in the world, and leading from a place that guides and bring
Mhm.
forth a certain way of being and living and leading that creates more change and more sustainable change in the world. So I love how you talk about the differences in how we
Mhm.
can live and lead, from fear to alignment or from force to flow.
Mhm.
And so I'm interested in how you help people sort that all out.
Mhm. Yeah, I wrote down passion, pass I on. I love that. And I think sometimes when you're a passionate person, a very high achieving person, a driven entrepreneur, um, your passion sometimes I think becomes misguided or not coming from a place of intention, because in the desire to pass it on, right, we focus so much on like the external
Mm,
validation, and or when we think about work life balance, I see so many people trying to figure out like what's that perfect little life hack
mm,
that I have to do, right? What do I have to do to find work life balance? How do I achieve work life balance?
right. Mhm,
How do I give people the change I want or have the impact I want in my business? And all of that, I think, is looking outward.
mhm,
And when I think about this like calm hustle method that I'm talking about, um, I think it begins with turning inward and ultimately making our nervous systems feel safe.
mm,
I think our nervous systems have to feel safe and grounded, because when we pursue our passion from that place, when we think about like pass I on,
mm.
um, what version of yourself do you pass on
That's right.
when you're coming forward from a place of groundedness and safety within your own self, versus when there's that sort of forceful, pressured feeling to put something out into the world just for the sake of putting it out there.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And a lot of what you shared there at the first part of that is about doing, right? And people not thinking that they have enough credentials, for example, or they have the right kind of gifts or the right kind of support, or what is it they do and don't have. And the thing that seems to come last when it really should be coming first is being. Because we think we have to do and have before we can be. And that's really living backwards, right? It's getting it all backwards. And that's where things become distorted and there's self doubt and a lot of other issues come up. And when we start from that place of being, how are you showing up? And as you're talking about being, and who are we being when we're showing up? Who are we being when we're not with anyone else, when we're by ourselves? Beyond the briefcase, some people would say, who is that person? And how can we be more authentic, more congruent across any environment or people, populations, clients that we're serving, that we're still coming from a place of authenticity? We're not trying to show one part of ourselves to one person and then another part to another person, and that's how we become fragmented, right? This is how everything gets distorted. So coming from a place of wholeness, of living our true values, which I know you talk about a lot as well, living in alignment with that and being congruent, being coherent, because people feel you before you even say anything, right? And we recognize that when we meet certain people, we can feel a certain type of way, or when we go into an environment, a home, an office, a store, wherever it might be, we notice the shift in energy, and it can feel unpleasant, neutral, whatever it might be. And it activates or triggers different forms of expression or what might be needing to be expressed. So it shows us what we can do next, where we can have greater impact, greater fulfillment, greater anything, depending on what our values are, what our beliefs are about ourselves. And so, how do we bring all of that into alignment, Nikolai?
Mhm. How do we bring all of that into alignment? Well, I think it starts with, you know, maybe a little bit of facing our fear. I see I see a lot of fear in the world now, and I'm sure you do as well, whether we're talking in us as individuals or in broader society. Um, you know, I think when there's so much fear surrounding us, it's easy to get swept up in it. And I think finding alignment and regulating your nervous system maybe comes with facing your fear in small ways.
Hmm.
And that can even be facing your fears about shifting from doing to being.
Hmm.
Sounds very simple, but as a therapist, I've sat in front of hundreds, probably thousands of people at this point because I've been in practice for 12-ish years. Um, and I had a conversation this morning with a client who said, they're making a change in their business and their life. And they said, I really want to approach this with more just like gentleness. And
Hmm.
in some ways, I'm identifying ways that I'm doing that in terms of I'm handling this business transition logistically differently than I may have in the past. I still see myself struggling with being compassionate with myself during that process. Like the thoughts that are going on up here are still very self-critical. And we had to talk about um, basically slowing down and letting in the positive emotions around this new change, which is very good and very exciting. But they said to me, okay, Nikolai, I understand in theory. And actually, they have a background in sports psychology. And they said, and this is something I coach people on myself. I read all the books about it. I understand the power of visualization and embodiment. But if I'm being honest with you, when I sit here and I try to enjoy the excitement around this change, there's something in my body that's just having a hard time with it. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that's fear. I think that's an example of how fear can show up in our day to day experience of just letting go of having to feel like we're always achieving something and just sitting. And also maybe just sitting and letting things be good.
Yes, letting things be good, because that's the thing. We tend to force those unpleasant feelings away. We also try to
Mm-hmm,
force an outcome, right? To kind of
mm-hmm,
control an outcome. What do I need to do now?
mm-hmm,
What do I need? And we get it almost in a panicky kind of state in that survival mode because
Mhm.
we've been living in such a prolonged state of survival mode, right? For
Mhm.
so long that we may not even recognize that we're in, especially if we're highly successful or high achieving. And that
Mhm.
purpose driven part of professionals and entrepreneurs, we don't want to deny that. And we don't want to shame that or judge that either. It's just how do we
Mhm.
live like that in a sustainable, aligned way that brings that greater impact and more fulfillment, and that we don't burn out because then people aren't being served. We're not sharing our
Mhm.
gifts. There's so much that's at stake when we can't do that. And that's why I think people start to panic too if they need to rest or take some time
Mhm.
away or to let go a little bit and surrender. It's very uncomfortable, very unsettling because they don't want to seem incompetent or that they
Mhm.
can't do it, either for themselves or trying to prove and be accepted by others, or that the world is going to fall apart if they leave. I'm speaking from personal experience there.
It
Why
sounds
I
like
didn't
you
leave
know that
certain jobs.
feeling.
Yeah, I know it very
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
Been
Hmm.
there, done that, but then doing it and then becoming comfortable with what unfolds after, even if it's uncertainty, and realize that it's actually okay. You know, if you have a little faith, if you have trust in your ability to handle anything, you kind of grow in your capacity to handle some more as
Hmm.
well. And it's not that we want to constantly expose ourselves to things that are wrong or harmful, but it's recognizing and accepting that we do have the capacity to deal with much more than we think we do. And
Hmm.
so it's not necessary to be in that survival, fearful kind of mode or to try to force and control the outcome. We lose that conscious connection. And I think
Hmm.
that's one of the primary steps in living in more alignment is having that conscious connection, having greater self-awareness, self-love, and having faith or trust in a higher power, and life force instead of forcing something else and imposing certain things on situations or people. And so I like that you talk about the calm hustle because some people still do like to hustle. That's fun. It's
Me.
adrenaline. It's like, let's go, right?
Hmm.
And so there's a calm hustle. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think so often we live in a world where we're meant to believe we have to make these very extreme choices. And so hustle, I think, is one example of that. We're hearing a lot about hustle culture, and I think there's a lot of really not great things about hustle culture. And I think we see a lot of hustle culture being perpetuated in a lot of just like westernized capitalist societies, especially with technology. It's like, how much more can you do? How much more can you be available? How quickly can you respond? And it's just, if we think about that sort of spiritually, I think that's very unsettling. But I also think if we think of that at the level of our nervous system, it's like constantly being assaulted in these like teeny tiny little ways of like, do more, do more, do more. It's not enough. It's not enough. And it's not enough. And it just wears you down.
Right.
So then what I see often is then people get burnt out and they want to go to the other extreme and they're like, I just want to go to Fiji and throw my computer in the ocean and never look at it ever again because I'm so tired of this sort of hustle culture. Um, but I also think for many of us, and again, I love the idea of like passion and passion being like pass I on. If all of us just metaphorically went to Fiji and threw our computers in the water or whatever it is that is challenging us, then what would we pass on? Right. Because
Yeah.
we're all sort of like retreating.
Right.
And so for me, calm hustle is really finding this in between space where we can still pursue our passion, pass it along, like create good things in the world, feel good about our work and our lives and what we're putting out into the world, without feeling like we have to basically sell our souls or sacrifice our nervous systems in the process.
Yeah.
And then I think that's how we are able to show up sustainably, which is better for us. But also, if you have a message you want to share with the world or you have an impact you're longing to have, you're much more likely to have that impact if you're not metaphorically like hiding out in Fiji for the rest of your life.
Right. You're fully present. fully in
Mhm.
present, fully
Mhm.
embodied with who you
Mhm.
came here to be and what you came here to do.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, do you have any practices, Nikolai, that can support us in regulating our nervous system and still being able to be on purpose and to achieve
Mhm.
and do it in a way that feels good?
Mhm. Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of small changes build to make big impacts. And I actually sent an email out to my email list this morning. Every month, I like to send out a completely free self-care challenge to help people regulate their nervous systems.
Yeah.
I think that's just a nice, energetic thing to put out into the world as something that's genuinely just a gift that hopefully is very helpful to people. But today, because it literally just went out, I can tell you, I really encourage people to focus on just noticing when they're operating from force. And I think when we're forcing things, it feels like somewhere in the body we're clenching.
Mm.
It's our jaw, it's our shoulders, maybe it's our stomach. There's almost this light fight or flight energy. Maybe for
Mhm.
some of us, not so light, but you feel almost on edge. Like you feel this, like you're ripped roaring to go. There's a lot of drive behind it. And I think when we're operating from force, we're usually thinking things like, I should be doing this. This is what I should be doing. I could be doing. It can be very self-critical feeling. And just, setting an alarm for a random time during the day, for maybe a week. And when that alarm goes off, just ask yourself in that moment, like, where am I right now? Literally in this moment in time, am I operating from a place of force? Or am I operating from a place that feels more like it's coming from flow? And I think flow feels more like a relaxed body. It's easy. It feels intentional. I think when we're in flow, those are the moments where it almost feels like a light bulb's going off and you just organically know what the path forward is. And you don't have to wrestle with it a lot.
Yeah.
And I think when we just start very simply by watching for like, when am I operating from force and when am I operating from flow? I think awareness is like a really good first step because we can see where we're forcing things. And I think that gives us the opportunity to then start to think about how can I find more flow? And I try to practice what I preach. So I was doing that earlier this week. And it was interesting because I do this for a living. So I often tell my clients, you may feel sometimes like I'm just super effective and I know what I'm doing, but it's just years of practice and sort of walking the path.
Mm.
So when I reflected on it, I thought, okay, you know what? In my work life, I've gotten pretty darn good
Yeah.
at finding flow and not having a lot of force. But the other day, I'm in my 40s. I'm worried about bone density and making sure my bone mass stays good as I continue to age. So I was like, I should work out. That's good for me. Um, but I'd had a very busy day before and an interesting start to the day that was not how my day usually starts. I was really forcing myself to go work out before work because I know it's good for me.
Mm.
And I don't think that was the right choice. I think I should have just read a book and trusted that, if I strengthen my body a few times a week, it's not the end of the world if one day,
Mhm.
that goes out the window. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And to not judge yourself for it, right? And
Mhm,
to,
mhm,
there's different things that we need at different times to decompress,
mhm,
and that's okay. It doesn't have to be a certain way. Again, not forcing any sort of outcome or,
mhm,
creating resentment around certain expectations that we might have or to fall short of. And I get the sense of the compression, when
mhm,
you're talking about that tightness and contracting. And I love the idea of flow. And one day I was taking a walk out in nature, which is something I like to do to decompress. And I love playing with words, it's
mhm,
passion, and I have many other acronyms and things like that. But when it came to flow, I was like, oh, that's interesting. When you look at flow, what do you have when you take away the F?
mhm,
Flow. right? LOE,
Mhm.
low.
Mhm.
And that's what happens when you're not in the flow. When I'm not in the flow, I notice I
Mhm.
have low energy. I feel heavy. I feel
Mhm.
dense. I feel contracted. I feel compressed. And like, okay, so what's the F is missing? What the F is missing? Family, fun, friendship, finances,
Mhm.
fortitude. There's
Mhm.
lots of F's. I created a whole page of F's when I started thinking about this a little bit more. And it's like, that's really interesting. And so that's a really helpful thing that I find too, when I'm not feeling
Mhm.
like I'm in the flow. I'm like, okay, what's missing? And even just starting with that F, brainstorming some words, some strategies there.
Mhm.
Practices, I prefer the word practices to strategies, because then strategies is kind of like this other kind of like driven kind of
Feels like
emphasis on it.
compulsive. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
there you go.
Feels
Yeah,
very
that's a good word.
forced.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
right. And so practices, because too, we're not trying to like achieve something or be successful in something or force
Mhm.
something. We're practicing it. We're learning it. We're learning as we go. We're growing in our capacity to handle more and to cultivate resilience and to support ourselves and love ourselves in the best possible way so that we don't fall apart, that we are here for ourselves. So we're fully present for ourselves and through that present with each other. And that's where we come out of the hustle and having to push and compete and do all of that into more harmony, which is really what I feel, what I hear you talking about when you talk about calm hustle, is coming back into our harmony with ourselves and in our world and with our environment and even with our daily practices. Like you said, some days it might be working out, others days it might be reading a book. All of it is self-care, all of it is soul care. What does our soul need right now? So talk about a lot about soul growth on the show too. And I know that in what you provide, of course, everyone listening here, I highly recommend that you go further into Nikolai's work. I'm going to have a link for her website below. And if you want to get on that list so you start receiving some of those challenges she gives out, we'll have a link for that too. And there's even an opportunity to meet you, right, Nikolai? If people want to have a one-to-one, there's a way to apply for that. So you want to talk a little bit about what you have on offer in that way?
Absolutely. So I work with people in a few different ways because I think following this theme of flow, I think all sort of nervous systems, human spirits have different needs at different times. And so I love having a variety of options to be able to like flow with people also in their process. So you can go to my website. My website is ompowermentpsych.com.
Love that.
Thank you. And I have what's called the Calm Hustle Method, which is 8 weeks of clinically informed DBT and EMDR protocol, which basically you don't need to know what that is other than it's part coaching, it's part trauma and nervous system healing. I think as a therapist, sometimes I see people dancing between the two. Sometimes you need to heal your nervous system, and sometimes you need those experiments or practices that are also just going to like, heal you and move you forward through experimentation and self inquiry, and sometimes, quite frankly, action. So I do 8 weeks of Calm Hustle Method to help overwhelmed women who just want to break free from burnout, perfectionism, and feeling like they're living their life in survival mode. I also do half day intensives because I just believe some people want more intense, deep work that they can then do periodically based on what works for their schedules and their life flows. And then I also do super short term, I call them the Calm Hustle Mini, which is just, hey, you want to touch base maybe 4 times? I'll give you more of my clinical expertise and what I'm seeing and some, let's again say not strategy, but practices that I would recommend because some people are self implementers, and they just want someone to sort of give them a little bit of insight and maybe a little bit of a kickstart, and then they want to just sort of take the reins. So those are the three main ways people work with me because I find different people want different things.
Yeah, it's true. And
Mhm.
so this is a great access point to
Mhm.
enter into that world, into the
Mhm.
world. And it feels like a safe entry because I love how you called
Mhm.
it. You can think of it as an experiment, right?
Mhm.
Think of it as an experiment. Be curious about it. And I think that curiosity can overcome the fear pretty quick too,
Mhm,
and make it
mhm,
the next safe step forward. So we'll have all that information down below, along more with about Nikolai as well and her
mhm,
background and what she really specializes in. And take a look at those links, click on those and get a sense of how your nervous system responds to that. Is that
mhm,
something that you need right now? And are you
mhm,
willing to accept that? So thank you
mhm.
so much for what you offer and everything that you shared here. And I wonder, Nikolai, if there's anything else that you would like to share with the audience today.
Uh, I think just that, in my opinion, and maybe you can relate to this, you shared a little bit about your own career journey and sometimes maybe staying places a bit longer
Hmm.
than you now looking back maybe would have liked to. I really believe our our nervous system is our biggest asset. And I really, really believe that when our nervous system feels dysregulated or out of alignment, um, that sort of harkening back to the client I shared about today, the tension that comes with that, the way we feel that in our body, it really can, I think, overshadow any sort of the spiritual sort of energy or insight that is there,
Hmm.
but it's like that forceful feeling, that tension can just block it. It's
Hmm.
there,
Hmm.
right? Like the guidance is there, the path forward is there, but when your nervous system is stuck in survival mode, it's like you just can't see it. And
Right.
so a regulated nervous system, I think, is like taking the blindfold off, maybe is a good way of thinking about it.
Mm.
You can just see the path forward so much more clearly that has always been there for you.
Without the
But
blindfold, for sure.
if you're stumbling
And the
around in
mask.
life with a
Yeah.
blindfold, right? It's
Hmm.
just maybe you still might find your path, but there might be a lot more stumbling along the way and metaphorical bruises versus when you can ground your nervous system and take the blindfold off, the path forward can be so much more potentially enjoyable and maybe even more efficient and effective.
The highest path forward. Yeah, because there's
Mhm.
many paths, to get to
Mhm.
where you think you need to be or
Mhm.
on the road. And yeah, taking the highest path
Mhm.
forward. Yeah.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for each and every one of you that have been joining us on Awaken and Ascend. We'd love to hear your
Mhm.
comments, your thoughts. What's been landing for you? What's kind of
Mhm.
given you a takeaway or an aha or something you want to practice, or maybe explore
Mhm.
a little bit more about Nikolai's work? Or you'll have access to my work as well. There's a Sacred Leaders Compass there that talks a lot about your lived experience. And if you're in that transition from career to calling, you'll find a lot of useful insights in there as well, and you'll have links to my website. But let us know what your thoughts are. What are you noticing? Maybe you're a professional yourself or an entrepreneur, and you've been noticing things in your clients and the people you connect with. Let's keep the conversation going. Let's support each other. I find it's not so much about our individual missions anymore. It's really about our collective mission, the collective transformation that's so needed right now. So it's an important time for us to join forces, not force a solution, but to join forces and bring more life force into creating that sustainable, harmonious kind of world that we all wish that we could be living in. So I think it's possible. So we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for being here, Nikolai. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you again next time on Awaken and Ascend.